We're going to make a scrapbook layout with the custom cutting border templates today, and we're going to make a fantastic layout. On the left, I have the first set of custom cutting border templates that came out, and the shapes were called the curves and the ripple, and then the peak and the zigzag. The second set of templates that came out had the swell and the waves, the crests, and the arches. For today's layout, I'm going to use the curves and the swell. The papers I'm going to work with today, I picked from through the years, the 1960s and 70s. It's got these funky designs, and so I'm going to use this design. It also has this blue on the back, but at this time I don't think I will be using that. I'm also pulling from the I Am Grateful To designer paper pack. And I'm using this blue that has this gold on the back, and I'm going to use both sides. I'm also doing something a little different, and I'm going to use a black background. This is just black cardstock to be my background. I'm going to use my Swell template on my designer paper, and it's my plan to cut basically an hourglass shape using the curved template. And so I want to be conscious of where the middle curves. Does it bow inward or does it bow out? I want it to bow in. And so that's how I'm going to cut my paper. I put the black cardstock underneath this for a second just so you can visually see how I'm orienting the template. I want it from the top to first bow outward, then bow inward, then bow out. And that will be the right side of the border that I'm going to cut. I'm going to place my template on the far edge of my paper and make the smallest cut possible at the edge of the paper. I'm positioning my paper as far on the 0 and 0 line as I can make it. I actually want it to fully cover that line. These templates come with markings, and they're labeled R, G, and B. I'm going to be using the R line, and every cut I reference today is going to be placing the R line, which is the closest to the template cutting groove. So I will be putting my R line on different numbers on my mat. It's probably hard to see where my template is on this very busy paper, but the first cut is just to get the shape of our template. And so I want to save as much paper as possible. So I'm going to just put my template as close as I can to the edge with the intention of not going over, and I'm using the red blade. And so I cut away this very little tiny strip. The next thing I want to do is to reposition the very tip of the paper back on this 0 line. So I'm pushing it all the way to the right. I am now rotating my template so that now it bows to the right in the middle to give my shape that hourglass shape. I'm going to put my little R line here at 2 1/2 inches. Here's my 2-inch mark. Here's my 2 1/2 inch mark. And I want my R line to be on that 2 1/2 inch mark. Now, like I always say, perfection is not required. The paper that we are using for our next borders does not have a direction on the blue side or the gold side. But note that if you have paper with a direction, the borders will be placed on the layout horizontally. So you'll want to cut your borders in a direction that will be appealing for the strips to be horizontal. When I place my paper on the mat to prepare it to be cut, on my right side, now I'm doing this because I'm right-handed, I want it way past this 0 line. That way, when I make my first cut, I won't be going off the edge of my paper. And I'm going to line up my template and put that R right on that 0. I want it right on the 0. Now, I'm also going to use some peel and place tape, and you can also use some repositionable tape, but I want my paper to be steady as I cut my strips with the template. So I don't want the paper to be sliding and shifting. Each cut I would like to have at the same size as possible. So I've placed my paper on the mat, well over the 0 line. I'm holding it steady with some peel and place tape, and I'm going to make the first cut. I'm going to put my R line on the 0. And because the paper is over, we're going to cut in reference to that 0 line. Now I'm going to move just my template, leaving the paper in place, and I'm going to put that R line over on the 1/2 inch line. When I'm satisfied I have my R on the 1/2 inch line, I'm going to cut a strip at 1/2. And that made a lovely border. Next, I'm going to move it so I put my R line on the 1-inch mark. And now I have 2 lovely strips. Next, I'm going to move the R to the 1 3/4 line. And make sure it's the R line we put on the 1 3/4 line. So we have our R on the 1 3/4 line. Okay, and we are holding our template in place. There we go. And so our final cut we're going to make at the 2 1/2 inch line. That's where we're going to put our R, on the 2 1/2 inch. I think it shows up better now, but here are our strips. We cut 2 more skinny ones. These 2 didn't come out to be quite the same size, but that doesn't matter. It's not hurting anything. And now all we have to do is lay them down and arrange them. As I mentioned before, our borders are going to be horizontal. And so, because this one is a little bit larger, I'm going to put it as the bottom one. And this one, I'm going to put at the top. And in between both of them, I'm putting these more narrow strips. But I don't want them centered. So what I'm going to do is take my base paper, my background paper, and I'm going to push it all the way over to the flush left edge of my mat. And then I'm going to shift all of my strips that are the curve shape all the way to the right edge of my mat. I will cut off the excess that overhangs. And then I'm going to put very close to the edge, but not totally touching, my wide vertical strip. And that's basically my page. Putting my photos down like this. I'll probably mat my photos just to lift, especially this one, off of this very busy background. So I'm going to adhere all of my borders down and trim the edges and be right back. Well, I forgot something important. I forgot to mention that we're turning over our slimmer strips to the golden side. And that is our look. It's a good thing I remembered before I put the adhesive on here. I have our strips adhered to our black background. And one of the things that I had to decide, especially with the bottom, was which direction did I want this middle hump to go. And it is on here with the hump going upward on both the top set and the bottom set. I did have the hump going down for a second, and that gives a nice, unique look as well. I could have had both top and bottom going down, or I could have had them pointing towards each other. These variations are what make repeating a layout so much fun. You can make it again and change 1 or 2 little things, and that with different papers and different photos, and you have a whole new layout. Now, before I trim off these edges, using the edge of our mat helped to get our strips on the page straight and also keep them straight relative to each other, making this gap that's between them easy to align. Now, this gap is about 1/4 of an inch, but I totally eyeballed it. You can eyeball it and make it as wide or as narrow as you like. And another reason why I used the technique to align the paper to this side and the strips to this side was so that there was no measuring. You just put everything down based on how you liked it. Now that I've trimmed the right edge, it's time to put down our decorative piece. And I'm going to put it with these corners touching about the 1/2 inch line. And here's our layout. Funky colors that I like to go with a funky layout. This is the final layout. I matted the photos on white cardstock. We use the Curves custom border template to make these horizontal border strips, and we use the Swell shape to cut the vertical border. I got the camera icon from the Adventure Parks collection, and I used the admission tickets punch to make a couple of tickets to be basis for these clusters. And with my die cutting machine, I made 2 tags, one here and one there. And I also die cut out this title saying "What a Ride." So speaking of die cutting machines, I've got it from multiple reliable sources that Creative Memories will be coming out with its manual die cutting machine in August. And I have a prototype version of that manual die cutting machine by Creative Memories. And if you would like to see me use it on camera, please leave a comment and say dies. And I will bring it out and discuss the use of it. And I know one of the common questions that comes up is what other brands of dies will work at that machine. And so we can find out. So I hope you have enjoyed watching a scrapbook layout made with fantastic borders. And I hope that you will like the video, subscribe to the channel, and YouTube is going to show you another video that I hope you'll watch. Have a fine, scrappy day.